Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 21 of the Nope Coach podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Kohlberg, joined today by Linda Katz, and we are talking about the good girl energy, the good girl pattern, the good girl archetype. We've previously done an episode on the Tyrant King, so you may want to pause and scroll back and listen to that one first, but you do you. So if you want to listen to them in whichever order pleases you, today we're talking about the good girl. So Linda, introduce this for us, please.
Yes. So I can imagine that for many of us, just saying the words good girl conjures up a feeling, an image. I think many of us have a sense of who the good girl is. And so the good girl is one of the three energies that I consider to be part of the inner cage. The first one was the Tyrant King that we spoke about previously. And the good girl is really the energy or the aspect that is very people pleasing. Right? The source. Yeah.
I'm just going to interrupt you before you go ahead, because I just want to say, I forgot I did this with the Tyrant King. So great for memory. What comes to mind, listeners, before Linda goes into it? So as soon as I hear good girl, the image I get in my mind instantly is like me at school dress, high socks, perfectly polished shoes, should be seen and not heard. Homework is done, doesn't ask any questions, somehow manages to please everybody. Lunch is packed. It's just, and I just feel small, and I feel tired, just leaning into that energy. I feel like, oh, what are they going to want from me? And somebody asking for something and not even checking in. Do I want to? It's like, yeah, sure. And then I'll ask Sue, she'll do it. And that's saying, if you want something done, ask a busy person. And that just conditioned response to be helpful, and not be selfish. So anyway, I had to interrupt you there, but keep going.
Yes.
This is awesome.
I feel like that perfectly paints the picture of the good girl. I also love that you said doesn't ask questions. So I think that's really an interesting lens that I haven't even considered before. But there isn't really a lot of space to ask questions because we're supposed to have the right answers, right? Like, we're not supposed to be asking questions. We're supposed to be perfect. So the good girl energy is one of perfectionism, pleasing, sourcing our validation from everyone that is out there. And like you said, it's everyone, which makes it very difficult because we can't actually please everyone.
I'll just pause there.
Right?
Let everyone think about that. How many times have you done something because someone said, I want this, and then someone else, especially once you get more than two, you're in a group, this person wants it this way. And I can even think, it's so funny because we're recording this. I've just gotten the kids ready for school because after this, I'm taking them immediately. One of them likes their toast this way and one of them likes their toast that way. And I don't mind in that way. That to me doesn't feel like a good girl thing. But imagine if I had 6 or 8 kids. I'm not buttering toast 6 or 8 different ways. They'd be like, do your own. But, there are times where I think sometimes where I used to come unstuck with the good girl energies. Well, I don't want to be bitch. But if somebody wants something done in a certain way that's going to put you out, they could do it themselves. So it's when I do give my kids choices, it's you can have this or this, not what would you like for breakfast and they just order like they're at a restaurant. So it's kind of I will
the
do
restaurant of mom. No thanks.
Yeah, the restaurant of mom. I remember once my son, 2 things happened. One, he was like, I said, what do you want for breakfast? And he's like, well, what is there? And I'm like, the same as always. And he's like, I like to hear my options. So part of me was like, yeah, that's a good girl energy. And another time, so one thing I've always had with my children, I like porridge. I love a hot breakfast. Don't know why. And if I'm going to make my breakfast, I'm like, you need to have yours beforehand or you need to wait till after. And I've been really tight with that boundary. And then one day I just sat down, had my porridge and my stewed fruit. And Casimir's like, well, I want breakfast now. And I'm like, well, dude, you're going to have to wait. And he's like, in the story, Mummy Bear eats cold porridge. And I'm like, well, we don't live in a story. And what kind of system are we setting up? When you think about these traditional stories where, Mummy went without, or Mummy had the crumbs, or Mummy ate cold. So it was like, yeah, that's a real good girl energy, which I'm wholly unavailable for.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I know for me, it showed up really, I mean, it showed up all over the place, but one of the places was in my work because I was so afraid of sharing my point of view because, of course, there are people whose point of views do not align with my own. And so simply sharing what I think and believe and what matters to me and my voice in my work could potentially offend someone else. So there's that degree. There's the part, like you said, about saying no to people, which is that fear. We have that fear of disappointing them. So we want to manage
Mm.
their emotional response because we can't tolerate. It's actually also really about our own internal emotional response of like, oh no, I've disappointed someone. Now I feel guilty. This feels uncomfortable. I'd rather not do that. So I'm just going to unconsciously say yes to the thing, please the person. And later on, resentment starts to build.
Yeah, and what do we do later on when we're feeling resentful? We some way overeat, overshop, like overspend, gamble, drink. And then what we do is we spend thousands of dollars and hours trying to find the right diet or the right program to overcome our, oh, I just can't get my shit together with food, or I'm just, and it's like, no. You simply need some boundaries and to be able to say no and mean it and say no and not feel guilty or notice the guilt and observe that and go, hey, is this mine or is this like society's or is this conditioning?
Yes.
Because like I think
Yes.
there's so many times where I've asked now as an adult for my needs to be met, or I've been like, no. And people have tried that with me. Oh, you're inconveniencing me or you're doing this. And I'm like, no, don't put that on me. That's not mine to carry.
Yeah.
But when you're
Well,
in the
I
good
think
girl
it's,
energy, it is as you're at the receiving end and people are unhappy with you. So you kind of become this kind of contortionist. And then you're like, well, which version of me am I with this person? Like for me, I'm a sweary fairy naturally. I cuss like a sailor. But when I'm in my good girl energy, it's like, oh, this person doesn't like that version of me. So I need to, or I speak really fast. So it's like,
yeah.
oh, I've got to slow down because they can't understand me when I speak really fast. Or I don't know, so many things.
Yes. Yeah. It's the chameleon, right? We can naturally notice the parts of ourselves that people respond to, and we just bring those forth. And it's like we all have, a certain level of that, I think. But it's that becomes, again, we forget that we're wearing the mask and we're just switching without even noticing.
Yes.
And we don't know what is actually true for us. And it's like you said, in the we do it automatically. We say yes without pause. We don't check in. We don't
Yes. And then
notice
we
like,
overschedule ourselves and then end up in the Tyrant King energy again. So it's kind of this unhealthy dynamic. So if you haven't listened to that
okay,
episode, check it out. But the thing that you just said
yeah.
is, I think sometimes once again, there are times to wear this mask, or there are times to be mindful of this. When I go to my kids' school productions, I don't swear like a sailor in there. That doesn't mean I'm not being me. That just
Yeah.
means like I am mindful of my environment. But if I
Yes.
have to be mindful of my environment in my own home or 24/7 because I am a chameleon to please the other people, that's where I think it becomes a really unhealthy dynamic.
Yeah, it's exhausting because you're also constantly having to be vigilant
Yes.
of your environment and reacting and responding and how do I manage this situation. And so
Yes.
the good girl, like one of the pieces around that too is that the expectation of goodness is inhuman. So the good girl, like you said, the good girl and the tyrant king, they often like snuggle up real close to each other because the tyrant king will parrot orders like, you should do this and you should do that. And the good girl's like, okay, yeah, I need to, kind of, there's no self within that is steps up and says, do I actually want to do that? Is that something that is in alignment with who I am? Something that feels like it resonates with my heart and soul? It just becomes like the following the internalized orders.
Have you ever come
Often
across the model, the drama triangle?
I've heard of it.
So in the drama triangle, it's triangle. No, it's in the name, but there's three sides, and one of them is the victim, and one of them is the aggressor, and one of them is the rescuer. So the dynamic between the victim and the aggressor at times kind of reminds me of the dynamic between the good girl and the tyrant king, because the tyrant king lays down the law and the good girl follows it, and they have this kind of weird kind of dynamic. And then we're going to move shortly into the rebel, which is your thing, but you can almost be the rescuer, but then the rescuer of self in the drama triangle, the rescuer is a separate person, but like the rebel can be like, just fuck this. So it's like, I'm out, as in I'm rescuing myself from this unhealthy dynamic, but is it really? So before we move into that, like for the next episode, anything that listeners should, like with the Tyrant King we were talking about, they should look at when their battery's getting depleted. What would you recommend for the good girl, like how they know they're starting to fall into that pattern?
I think one of the easiest places to begin is like getting curious and clear on your yes and no, which sounds so easy and is so freaking difficult. You know, it's that before you say yes to something, before you say yes to an obligation, buy yourself time.
I love that.
Let me think about it. Let me actually go back, right? Yeah, let me get back to you. And then it can oftentimes, when we're in the good girl, there can be a massive amount of over explaining that happens when, if we do say no to someone or we give the response that isn't expected.
Can I give you an example? Here we go. How many people can resonate with this? Suzanne, could you do this? Well, actually, the kids have a concert and then I've got to take Casimir to speech therapy and then Jeremy's actually in the office and then I have clients all day and we're just, the person's just like, whoa, because the thing is, they don't need to know the ins and outs of my entire life. A simple no would suffice, because guess what? They can ask someone else. But the over explaining, like, oh my goodness, whereas what you modeled there so perfectly, either can I get back to you? Let me check my diary. But the thing I do now, which is like, I think next level of ninja, if I'm not sure, I'll be like, can you check back with me like tomorrow or next week or something? So if I'm out and about, I'll be like, I'll check my calendar. Can you circle back to me tomorrow? Like put the onus on them, because often if they want it urgently, if they're in some kind of Tyrant King moment of their own, they will go and find someone else. Like they'll go through their mental checklist. And then when you do get back to them tomorrow or whatever, they'll be like, oh, that's sorted. So it's a wasted energy on your part. So now like someone's like, I don't know how to use Zoom, or how do I do this, or some business thing. I'll be like, oh, just hit me up tomorrow or hit me up next week. Like, you know, they don't, because they've either asked someone else or they've figured it out.
Yes. I love that. And it's like, that sense of let me get back to you, or circle back with me tomorrow, or circle back with me next week. And then the freedom to actually also be honest, to say, you know what, this actually doesn't resonate with me.
Yeah. Or I've thought about it.
It's okay to say that, right? It's like, we don't even need to be like, oh, my best schedule's so busy. It can just be like, it doesn't actually feel like it's a good fit for me right now.
I think there's so much freedom in that. Instead of lying and saying I'm busy or I've got a headache, like me, I used to all the time say yes, having no intention of wanting to do the thing. And then on the day I've got a headache or my kids are sick or my car's broken down, like I literally would like, oh shit, what excuse did I use last time? And now I'm just kind of like, yeah, no thanks. I'm not into that. And I can still feel my mum going, that is so rude. I'm like, no, what is rude is saying yes when you have no intention of it. Because the thing is, if you keep making up an excuse, they're going to keep asking you. Where if you say like, thanks so much, I don't actually enjoy whatever activity it is, what else would? Like movies a great example. I don't do horror in any way, shape or form. So if Linda's like, hey, Suze, want to go and see this horror movie? I'd love to see a movie with you, Linda. I don't really do horror. What else is showing? And then you have such a, like, I'm not saying Linda can't go see it. She can probably find another friend who loves it. But I think, the people-pleasing good girl energy of, like, I've got one more example. I know we're at time, but I'm going to finish with this. Mother's Day stalls at school, because we've just had Mother's Day here. I'm
intrigued.
The kids often come home. People aren't going to like this, but I'm full Suze in my show. It's like, oh my goodness, this thing stinks. Like this candle is, or this bracelet is ugly, or whatever it is. And for me, I have a very sensitive things to like fake perfumes, and they're often cheap because they're at the school stall. So I understand. And my daughter brought me something, and God, it stunk. Like the whole house, I had an instant headache, and I said to her, I love so much that the thought you put into this, it's absolutely beautiful. In future, Mummy doesn't like things that are scented. So instead, I remember having this whole conversation, and my mum was there, and she was like, how dare you? Do you know how much crap I've had from you over the years and all this sort of stuff? And I was like, hold up. Is it better to smile, nod. Like I remember there was this perfume once that I bought her that she slathered all over. So I was like, oh my God, she loves it. So I kept buying it for her every year. And she's like, I hated that shit. And I was like, so which one is more rude? And then this year, the Mother's Day just gone, I got books, I got chocolate. I was like, oh my God, the kids are amazing. And I remember at the Mother's Day stall, they didn't go. They're like, oh, Mummy doesn't like those things. I was like, please don't say that. I don't want to offend anybody else. But when you come out of the good girl and actually ask for your needs to be met, the people who love you are so accommodating because they want to get you something that you love. They don't want to get a tick in the box.
Yes. Yes. And you give the people who really love you the most a chance to know you better.
Exactly. Like there's been
like you get to be known. Like, oh, I don't
worse.
actually enjoy scented candles. You know, like these
When
are
I've
the
given
things that
somebody
bring me
something
joy.
and I've been so excited about it, and then I've been like, oh, they hated it. And like part of me, yeah, it hurts in a moment, but then I'm like, well, what do they like? And my sister, I know she listens to my show, so I won't actually give this story, but I saw something just yesterday. I was like, she's gonna love it. So now I'm just waiting because it's going to be posted. But it's like giving somebody something they truly enjoy, I think is one of the magics of life. My love language is gifts, but giving somebody something for the tick in the box, and you should be grateful and smile and nod when you really don't, and then go, oh, are they coming over? Quick, get out the doily. They will look and see that it's not here. That's a whole dynamic that's a good girl energy that's exhausting.
Yes, 100%. 100%.
I love
Wonderful
it. Thank
example.
you, Linda. So if people are like, oh my gosh, I need to know more about this, which, 100% recommend, where do people find you?
So you can find me on my website, singingbirdcoaching.com, or I'm pretty active on Instagram, and my handle there is Singing Bird Coaching also.
I love the uniformity with that. And there's other episodes that feature Linda Katz, so just do a search and listen to those as well. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a fabulous rest of your day.
Thank you so much.